Hi, y'all. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur and Amazon bestselling publisher, author, and all natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self care, sustainable business care, and overall intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach.
I always want to say embodied coach. So I think
Hmm.
I'm switching my intro because I definitely am an embodied coach.
I like it.
Amazon bestselling author and publisher, and a dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Yes, together we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co founders of the Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week and have intentional conversations between ourselves and with our expert guests about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this, right? How do we
Yeah.
do this big stuff?
Yeah. How are you doing today?
Woo! Yeah, I
Yeah.
am well. How are you?
Good. Grateful. Grateful.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited to talk to our guests today about our topic. I'm at a conference this week.
Yeah.
For our listeners, I'm at the Alternate Roots Conference. It's where arts and activism meets. It's a
Mm.
conference that I have been participating in for 10 years. And it's a community of people I love, right? There's always new people, but there's a lot of people that I know. And it was so fascinating because when I got to registration, um, and people I adore looked at me and said, "How are you?" and
Mhm.
gave me a hug, and I promptly burst into tears. I was like, "I'm really okay,
Yeah.
but I love you, and I haven't seen you since these big things have happened in my life, and I am overflowing." So yeah, when grief is like that, that it just is. I am okay, and my eyes are leaking a lot. So,
Mm.
what about you? How are you?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Excited about this show. Y'all, today we're talking about financial wellness. And for me, this has been a huge focus as we transition things, right? We've been talking about the season that you're in. We've shared about Shayla Glow transitioning out of the retail space. So there's a lot of things that are moving. And with that moves the logistics in the business and where the money comes from. And at the same time, still having things happen, homegoing celebrations and difficult things. Um, so I'm again super excited to talk about good grief and how to use it in a positive way, and finances to be intentional. So I've been taking deep breaths and working on keeping my non-negotiables. I was writing in my journal. I said, "Oh, it's been 2 weeks. Yep, that sounds about right." So that's what I've been working on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
hitting that reset sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Especially when things have been out of routine,
Hmm.
right? Which
Yeah.
grief often does that, kicks
Right.
us a little off the path.
Yeah, and I've been working on it. I've been working on fixing my attitude, and every day it's like, oh, another opportunity, because I've gotten to the stage at some of this stuff where it's good grief and I can see the way that I've worked through it. I can see the post-traumatic growth like Tracy talks about in our volume one.
Mhm.
I can see the art of it like Dr. Sheila K. Collins shares about, and other stuff is new. And I know that everything works for my good. So this attitude or this frustration and, I'm working on reshaping it and, and making sure that my perspective is healthy in the
Mhm.
way that I'm remembering things and thinking about things on a daily basis so I can maintain my wellness. That's what I've been working on. So I'm excited to talk to our guest and hear how she helps her clients with grief because when it's not one thing, it's another thing.
I was talking to a dear friend this week who, both of us have had pretty tough years with loss and other things like kind of, upsetting the apple cart. And
Mhm.
I had seen something on social media, and I'm sorry I don't have the source of where it was, but it was this suggestion. And so my friend and I were like, oh, we're going to do that. And it was a suggestion that you create a shared note with a friend or an accountability buddy.
Mhm.
And you look for the good, right? Which is our practice in interplay, is to look for the good in the firm. But my friend was saying she was kind of having a little crisis of faith, like, and I was like, well, so we titled ours our daily dose of the divine. And
Mhm.
so when we're going to look for where that shows up for us and those glimmers of joy and hope and gratitude, and write them down every day. and share them with each other. So, getting back to that gratitude practice and that really looking for it in the midst of hard times, right?
Yeah. Yes, I
So,
do love that. I love the shared note for the community, for the accountability, right? It reminds me of what I had started doing, the 2 things that went well today, and I started, like,
mhm.
breaking up my journal time, so I think I need to bring that back.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, are you ready for me to share with our listeners our definition that we're playing with today of our dimension?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, let's do it, y'all. Financial wellness is an intentional approach to your relationship with money as a tool. It includes stability with current finances, increasing positive financial behaviors like budgeting, reducing debt saving, and investing. And financial wellness incorporates knowledge and skills that helps to change behavior, reduce financial stress, and creation of a strategic financial plan to reach your desired financial goals.
So
And
much.
today we're going to be talking about that around grief and how that can be upended and
Yes.
change your
Mhm.
financial wellness, and how do we have financial wellness
Absolutely.
when things in our life change,
It's important.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about my mom. Listeners know that my dad passed away in May, and that's what we've been going through. And it does shift when your spouse dies or your dad. There are. I was telling somebody the other day, um, because I have such good support. And people talk about, well, he's just transitions, he's still here. Duh. I was like, yeah, I get that. Like, I see my
Mhm.
dad everywhere I go. Like, I'm not I'm missing him being here physically, but he's with me.
Mm.
Like, we talked about this last week in the show, and Tim
Yes.
Walls, um, but I think what is exhausting and the grief brings on also is the practical daily task, and a lot of them do involve finances. When you think about burial, when you think about the travel to get there, when you think
Mm.
about insurance, and you think about, so I want, if you're willing to read our guest bio, and let's get her up here because I'm having this conversation. I want her to be on the stage with us because
Yes. Cindy, we need you. That's cuz, right? That is why. Okay, y'all, today we're talking to Cindy Burns. Cindy Burns is a widow with 6 grown sons. After her husband died, she found herself lost and unsure of who she was and her purpose in this new life. Through a series of events that she calls synchronicity, she realized that she was meant to help other widowed people and is now dedicated to helping other widows and widowers by coaching them to rediscover who they are and find their new purpose. She has a private Facebook group, Widows and Widowers Support Group, Finding Purpose, and a Facebook page, Widows and Widowers Finding Purpose. Help us welcome to the stage, Cindy Burns. Hi,
Welcome,
Cindy.
Steve.
How are you?
Grateful to have you.
I'm
Yeah.
grateful to be here.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for this powerful work you're doing in the world.
Oh, I tell people it's selfish
Mhm.
because it brings me pleasure to help other people. So I'm not being very giving, I'm being selfish.
Yeah. I think
I
you
would
can
say
do
both.
both. I
Yeah.
would think both. Like, I don't think you're being selfish. You might not being altruistic, but I have a feeling the people in your group wouldn't say the same.
No, probably not.
Right.
So I would love for you to walk us through first, actually, before you walk us through what you did and how you help your clients, right? How would you say you were with finances when your husband was here? How proficient were you?
Well, I've been the money handler
Okay.
our whole marriage.
Okay.
So it was he was the spender.
Okay.
Anytime we got into financial difficulty, it's because he wanted something.
Okay.
And he didn't get the idea. He didn't understand the concept of window shopping.
Mm.
We like to go to antique stores or um, yard sales and things like that. And I'd say, I like something. And he'd say, well, buy it. And I said, you can like something without having to own it.
Yes.
He didn't understand that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but we did pretty well. We had some lean years because with the 6 boys all growing up at the same time, going through 2 gallons of milk a day,
Mm,
bread, cereal, it was
wow.
ridiculous, especially when they were teenagers. But he worked double shifts so that I could stay home with the kids. And partly part of the reason he did that too was so that they couldn't call him in on his days off. If he
Mm,
was working 16 hours a day, they
mm,
couldn't call him in on his days off. And he was able to spend that time coaching basketball, coaching little league, just doing things, going camping, doing things with us and with the boys. So it sounds like he wasn't there, but he was very present in their lives.
beautiful.
What was his name, Cindy?
His
That's
name was Dan.
Dan.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I said he wasn't perfect, but he was perfect for me.
Beautiful. I hear what you're saying. So now you help widows and widowers, right, with their financial wellness. Can you talk about that transition and how you help your clients right now?
Well, it depends on what stage they are when they come to me. A lot of times when somebody close to you dies, because I work with people outside of widows and widowers, anybody that's grieving.
Mm.
Um, I've kind of expanded. But when somebody close to you dies, you start questioning your own mortality. You
Yes.
start thinking about, like if your person didn't have life insurance and you've got to scramble to find money to pay for the funeral,
Mhm.
or if they did have life insurance and you were able to not only pay for the funeral, maybe to pay off some bills. So there's the two different sides of it, but it makes you stop and think, okay, how do I want to leave my family when it's my turn to go? So that's a time when, people start thinking about pre-planning their funerals, um, getting life insurance if they didn't have it. And I usually refer them, the funeral homes, of course, they'll work with you. You pre-plan and you prepay for it, but it's like a monthly payment kind of thing. You don't have to come up with it all at once. Um, but I also refer them to their banker or a financial planner. If they've got money that they want to protect and don't care that much about growing it, I'll send them to their banker. But I know a few financial planners, and they will help you grow your money. And I mean, you can go in with a few $100s, and they'll help you figure it out.
Yeah.
So I'm not a financial expert, but I know who to send them to.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
But one of the things that widows fall into is my mother did it and I did it, even though I knew she had done it and I tried not to, is
Right.
retail therapy. I discovered online shopping and I was never much of a clothes horse. I hate shopping for clothes,
Mhm.
trying it on and everything. But I found a store online that had stuff I liked and that fit me.
Mhm.
And I got a whole new outfit, a whole new wardrobe, which I shouldn't have. But my mother spent hers on a new house and furniture and all. Yeah. And
I
then
hear what you're saying.
then she sold her house and moved to Florida, which she shouldn't have done. But hindsight,
It's 2020.
yeah.
What
Yes.
do you recommend? Speaking of that, Cindy, because my mom is just going through this right now. My dad passed away at the end of May.
Mhm.
And, she is sticking with the rule of I'm not making any major decisions for the first year.
That's a wonderful rule.
Right. I wanted to know, like, do you recommend that?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
Depends on the individual. If you've always been very practical and your reasons for making the decision are practical and good, and people around you agree that it's a good thing, go for it. But if you're unsure at all, don't do it. If you go one day, yeah, this is a good idea, and then the next day, not a good idea. Don't do things spontaneously. Table it, go back to it in a week, because whatever the decision is, it's still going to be there. New car, new house, whatever, it's still going to be there in a week. Have time to think about it and talk to a finance person, a banker, or like if it's whether or not to sell your house, don't talk to a real estate agent.
Right.
Right, because we know what they're gonna say.
Yeah. So, just try to be smart. Get advice from people you trust. The reasoning for that rule is there is such a thing as widow fog or widow's brain. It's like pregnancy brain, but on steroids. And you're not making the best decisions. You haven't gotten used to your new life. And you need to try to get into some kind of a new normal and realize what that is. And then you can figure out, and that takes time, but then you can figure out what's best for you. And sometimes it is moving or buying that new car or quitting your job. When women are, I think men too, widowed people are allowed to retire and collect Social Security at age 60. And I did. Not everyone does. And I did, if I'd stayed to full retirement age, I would have made more, gotten more money. But I had his pension coming in too. And I hated my job. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
So how do you feel about that choice now?
It was a wonderful choice.
Good.
Except for the fact that then I didn't have a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
That makes sense.
My kids, for the first few years, they needed me. They had health problems and things that, like, I flew to Colorado and stayed there the whole summer. I spent 4 years going back and forth to Virginia Beach, helping a son out there.
I hear you.
So, but then all of a sudden, everybody got healthy, everybody got settled, everybody got, their life was good.
Yeah.
So they didn't need me anymore. And I didn't have a job to get up for. And it was a dark time for me. It was a very dark time. And it was about 7 years after he died. I'd already gone through all the usual grief emotions, but now I was at the point of, who am I and what's my purpose in life? Because I believe that everybody has a purpose.
Yes.
The purpose changes as our situations change, and my purpose changed. I didn't know what it was. I had to go find it. And I had a few false starts, but as soon as I found out about life coaching, the first course I took was life purpose coaching, which helped me. And then I realized now I can help other people. And the people I wanted to help were people who were in my situation.
Yes.
A lot of coaches were their ideal client.
Right.
Yeah.
We
I hear you. Because we turned a corner.
Right.
And so it was very important, and it also helped me. I'm not your typical grief coach. A lot of them, therapists and counselors and coaches. I can't call myself a therapist or a counselor because I don't have the degrees, but so I am a coach. And what a lot of them do is just kind of listen, support you, say all the right things, say things maybe that their friends wouldn't say, and help them to benefit from my experience. But I take it a step further. I help them with that in the beginning stages of grief. But there comes a time when you look around and you go, who am I? Why am I here? And you need a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And that's what I help them do. I help them set small goals because, small wins help you continue.
Yes.
And sometimes it's financial. They want to save enough money to go on a trip or something, or to pay off the funeral. So I help with that. I help with practical things, but I also help with mindset. I mean, I'm not into the whole woo space, but I have friends that are.
Mm.
So if somebody needs that or wants that kind of thing, I have people to refer them to. My process is more practical. It's more, okay, these are the what is it you want? I find out their wants and their goals. And if they don't know, I help them figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And help them learn who they are and who they want to be. And there's it takes time. And eventually, they figure it out and they make it through their smaller goals. And, we have to deal sometimes with guilt. We have to deal with anger, all kinds of emotions that you feel in the beginning, but some of them stick around. And like if it was a violent death or a sudden one from an accident, there's a lot of anger that comes with that. And so I help them channel that anger into other things. Journaling, you guys are talking. Oh, that's a big thing. It helped me a lot. It really helped me a lot. I started out with gratitude, and then I started out with, and then I added a prayer list for everybody I'd said I'd pray for. I had to write it down because I wouldn't remember.
Right.
And then I just kind of went free form and just wrote what was in my heart and in my head.
Yeah.
Got
So
it out there.
is this where your guided grief journal came from, your journaling practice? Can you tell us more about that?
There are pages in there, such as write a letter to, it's geared more towards widows, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's write a letter to your spouse, write memories, have a conversation with them. What would you be saying to each other? How did you see them in your life today? Those kind of things. So, and it helps. I mean, there's also, sometimes the pages are going to get tear stained, of course. So I tell some of my clients when, especially when I don't have it now, but I want to build it back up, is I had a group membership, and some weeks we'd talk just general, and then other weeks I'd have a process to take them through. And they always loved it when I said, I'm going to make you cry today. But you have to. That's the first thing I tell people is feel your feelings. Because if you try to hold it in, you're going to end up like I did with a bleeding ulcer. Because I didn't want my sons to worry about me. So I didn't let them see what I was going through, which was harmful for me and definitely not helpful for them. They wanted to worry about me. They wanted to help me, but I seemed to have it all together. I kept telling everybody I'm fine,
And how old were they when your husband passed away, Cindy?
My youngest was starting his senior year of high school. So they were They were pretty much grown and on their own. But I did have my youngest and another son living with me.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, my youngest, he's 30 now, and he just got his first apartment.
Yay!
Oh, so proud of him, so happy for him. He's been talking about moving out since he was 15. And the day I turn 18, I'm getting my own apartment. He just wanted the independence.
Yeah.
Living here with me, he had it. I mean, we didn't answer to each other or anything. He came and went. We were roommates, but yeah, having his own place is a really good idea. I was just so proud of him for doing it.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it sounds like grief interrupted that plan.
Yeah, it did. It did. And that's another thing. He told me recently that he's never cried for his father. And he's never felt like he needed to. One thing we did, we knew he was dying. He had lung cancer. And so before he started to slip away, all the boys took a turn, just them alone in the room with him, and just talked and, got to say, I love you and I'm sorry for being, whatever. And, to just to have him hear him say that he was proud of them. Because that's I think the one thing we all want our fathers. We all want them to be proud of us, don't we?
Yeah.
And I know I felt that way with my dad. And so they each had their personal time with him, so there were no regrets. There was nothing left unsaid. And I think that's what Connor needed to do. And he's adapted very well. He suffers from depression and anxiety, but it has nothing to do with his dad dying. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mom, it sounds like you've done a great job. But I hear you about what you did is you stuffed it for the first couple of years, and that was a problem.
Yep.
In order to take care of other people, you weren't taking care of yourself.
Yeah, it was actually one of my sons that helped me to realize that I was depressed. I wasn't sad, so I didn't think I was. You always associate depression with sadness and crying and that kind of thing, but I wasn't taking care of myself. I would go a week without showering. I would go a week without even getting dressed because I didn't need to. I'd spend my time in front of the TV or playing games on my computer. And my son, he kind of sat me down one day and he says, this isn't right. And I realized that, I could live another 20, 30 years. So did I really want those years to be like they were then? And, that's not living.
Yeah.
That's existing. And I didn't want to just exist.
Right. Yeah. Courtney says, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of Sula's chapter in volume 2, Self-Care is an All-Time Job, and after her daughter transitioned, she said it was just back to basics. Did I eat? Did I take a shower?
I have
Did
a
I brush my
checklist.
teeth? Yeah.
Yeah.
What were the things that were most surprising that you had to put on your checklist for you?
No, I have a checklist available if somebody wants it. But
So good. I love that.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yes.
but it's things like, did I eat? Did I brush my teeth? Have I at least gotten dressed? When was the last time I showered?
Yeah.
Do I have clean underwear or do I need to do laundry? Just things like that. And, what have I had to drink today other than coffee?
Right.
And just little things like that you don't realize. And I thought,
Cindy, I have a question about that in relation to finances, especially, right? Because I've even noticed with my dad, right? I'm having to really put it on the calendar to check things that I've paid things. Because, your brain, like you said, especially the widows, but I think anybody that's going through
Anybody.
grief and
Yeah.
loss, like you get a little fuzzy headed or time, there's this weird time space continuum that like you look up and you're like, wait a second, it's been what? And so I think about that in relation to finances, in relation to when anything happens that throws us off our routines. Like, how do we reset that? Or,
Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shayla Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shayla Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about 3 groups really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all 3 steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. The story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade, and it smells great, y'all. So
yes, esthetician tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, I work with individual coaching clients, I work in community classes, and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength-based, embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. Especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
how do we reset that? Or is that on the checklist? Or, what is your advice for folks that are grieving? And, the electric company still wants they still want their electric bill. they want their payment.
All of my bills are on auto pay.
Yeah.
I did that after he died. I mean, some of them were, but after he died, everything went on auto pay. And so I can't use the excuse of I forgot.
Yeah. That's good practical
Yeah.
advice too.
Yeah.
I
And
like that.
yeah.
And what else were you going to say? Excuse me, I'll let you finish.
No, go ahead.
And I was going to say, because what that brings up for me, Christine, is the fact that I had to go to work 2 days after my mom passed away, right? So
Right.
you might need to do the opposite of auto pay.
That
Mhm.
burns me. That people aren't given enough time to grieve. I mean, 2 days after, you hadn't even had the funeral yet, right?
No.
See,
And didn't have the money for it, didn't have life insurance. Like
Yeah.
she passed away in November. That was all March.
Yeah, I mean, we're not given time to grieve. Now, there's been pros and cons, but now grief is in it's a medical thing now,
Mm,
and under psychiatric though. So,
okay.
um, but that might be a good thing
Hmm.
because I've talked to more and more widows who are able to go on disability.
Okay. Yeah.
Their doctors.
Even if it's short term. Yeah.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. And what I was gonna say before we get too far into this conversation, because I want to keep going that way too, because it does affect you for longer than a week, 2 weeks, a
Mhm.
month, right? But if you do have to go off of auto payment, or you weren't on auto pay, and that's not an option because the
Yeah.
money is slipping further to the left instead of the other way, right? I would say something where you can look at it every day, but I
Mhm.
would be really intentional about that, right? That spot might not be where you used to go before. So if you're not eating, maybe the refrigerator isn't realistic, maybe the work desk isn't realistic. Um, but having it in front of mind, maybe some phone alerts, maybe it is the accountability like we were talking about, Christine. Maybe you have somebody where you find a spark of joy every day and that person helps. Like whatever can help you in that moment, just realizing that you need the help and then
Mhm.
trying to make sure that you don't miss it. If auto pay, that's a great solution. If that's not an option, those are things that I think would have helped me in that season and might help somebody else who doesn't want to miss the bills and everything that's going to come. Um,
When times were tough for us,
yeah.
and they'd call, "Why haven't you paid this bill?" And I'd say, "Well, I had to rob Peter to pay Paul, and this month you were Peter."
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just had the way it had to be. Um, and yeah, I mean, I've lived that. I understand that.
Yeah.
It is difficult. If you can't pay a full bill, like your electric bill, pay
Mhm.
something on it so that it's in good faith.
Mhm.
Call them, let them know what the situation is. Those are the kind of calls that are really hard to make in the beginning.
Mhm.
You can't, my husband died last week and there's no money. So many, you know, men and women die while they're still working, while they're
Mhm.
still employed. So not only have you lost your spouse, but you've lost their income, but the bills all stay the same.
Yes.
Mhm.
And, if you've got children under the age of 18 or they're still in high school, still in school, they get a stipend every month. Um, Most widows do not. And so there's those kind of things to take into account too.
Yeah.
Um, if you're not working, you may find yourself having to go back to work to find a job. And yeah, it's what I really would love to do is to make enough money doing this so that I can fund a foundation
Mm.
to help people who are in financial straits after a death of a loved one.
Mm.
Funerals or to pay their electric bill or they haven't paid their rent in 2 months. I'd like to be able to help them. And I mean, we talk about the homeless. Well, let's prevent them from being homeless to begin with.
Right? Because Cindy, I just saw, like, I think it was this week, they were talking about California and how many of the homeless folks on the street are elderly,
Yeah.
Mm.
and that the cost of living has gotten so high and they just can't do it.
Mhm.
Um, so that is it is a crisis in the United States right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
when you have to make a decision between paying for your medicine or buying food,
Mhm.
that's not a good thing.
Right.
Right?
Years ago, I don't know if it's still being done, but years ago it got a lot of press and talking about that a lot of elderly people were eating cat food,
Mm.
I remember that. I remember that.
but now cat food's expensive.
Crazy. Crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Right? Well, Cindy, I think about, you were talking about that, about how it's hard to make those calls. And, Women Connecting in Wisdom, we are really into community and support and accountability. And we have something we call body doubling. where if somebody reaches out and just needs somebody to sit with them, or to, that they might not be able to actually make the call because, security reasons and stuff like that, but they could sit beside you or sit with you. And my mom and I've been talking about that because she's got some paperwork and she's in Colorado and I'm in Georgia. And I'm like, all right, let's just put it on the calendar and we'll be on Zoom together and walk through it. Or you can just do it while I'm working on something else. And that I don't know, for my own life, I have found that power of body doubling and just having somebody to ground me when I'm doing hard things, especially when, I'm not at the top of my game.
People always say, how do I help a friend who's lost somebody? That's one way right there. One of the biggest things you can do to help a friend is don't disappear after a couple weeks. After a couple weeks, first you get a phone call every day, seeing how you're doing. You get meals dropped off and things like that. But then it reaches a point where everybody goes back to their normal lives, but you're still a widow. And a lot of friendships end when the spouse dies, male and female. Part of it is the friend is thinking, I'm going to give her space. She don't want space. She may say she wants space, but she doesn't want space. She wants somebody there, even if they're just sitting there, even if you're just watching Netflix together. And that's what I tell them. Show up with a bottle of wine and popcorn and say, we're watching movies tonight. Or if they're younger and they've got kids, show up and say, I'm going to watch the kids. You go take a nap, take a shower, take a walk, whatever you need to do. Because especially if they're young kids, you're watching them like a hawk to see how they're reacting. And you're not taking care of yourself. And, just little things like that, and just be there long term. Because when people back away to give us space, or they don't use your spouse's name, I don't want to remind her. I'm sorry, but we're going to remember no matter what. So that's one other thing I tell people is use their name.
Right.
Use their mother's name, their father's name, their husband, wife, whatever. Use name so that they know that you remember them.
Yeah. And that you're really right there with them in the situation. Because like you said, you're not going to forget Dan. His name was Dan.
Right. And you have 1,000 stories about him.
Oh, yeah.
I think, I can't remember if it's an African proverb or what culture it comes out of, that talks about, people die twice. When they actually transition out of their bodies and the last time their name is called.
Yeah.
And so I love that advice about calling their name. And I always like, Cindy, like I always like to ask my friends, like, tell me a story.
Yeah.
Like, would you tell us a story about Dan, Cindy? Like you lit up when I said that. What's it like? Tell us a short story.
We had his funeral here in Virginia, but a lot of people, we moved to Virginia from New York. Okay. So a lot of people weren't able to come. So he died in August. We had his funeral like within days because one of my sons was in the Army, still is, and he had used up all his leave. And he was going to get, if he stayed, one day past, he would have been AWOL. So we had to rush that through. And that's why a lot of people from out of state couldn't make it. So in October, we went up to New York and had a mass said for him at his old church, the church he grew up in. And his cousin is now a deacon. So he said the mass, and his homily was interesting. because they were not little angels when they were growing up.
Mm,
His cousin was as closer to him than his own brothers were. And we had requested, Dan wore tie-dye the last 4 years of his life. And I mean, that was his uniform.
mm,
And so we requested that people wear tie-dye. Don't dress in black, wear jeans and a tie-dye t-shirt.
mm.
And so for the memorial service, we requested that too. And Johnny says, I know it was requested, but I couldn't really do it. And then after mass, he opened up his shirt and he had a tie-dye shirt underneath.
Ah,
So
I
yeah,
love that. I love
That's cute.
rituals and things that celebrate and honor
Yeah.
people
and
we've loved. And
you
I
have to
think
make
about
it your own. Yeah,
right. Well, and I think about that with finances too, like people donating things in people's names and to the charities they loved.
yeah,
And in, we had several people do that for my dad where they gave instead of flowers because they knew we were traveling in for the service that they did something in honor of him. And that was really lovely and appreciated. And I just, yeah, it's a complex thing. And then some of the things like you shared with us are just so practical and incremental, and having somebody to walk along beside you while you do it, I think is
yeah.
crucial.
Because
Yeah.
when your friends back away, they don't want to include you in some things because it's going to be all couples and they don't want to make you feel bad, or maybe they're not sure if you're ready to socialize yet or whatever. Um, you're sitting there going, they all went out to dinner last night and nobody thought to ask me. So your feelings get hurt. You don't understand that they're actually trying to think of you.
Yeah.
So your feelings get hurt. So, then friendships just break away because of things like that. Some longtime friendships just don't
Mm,
make it past something like that.
Hmm. And what I hear you saying, and there's a few more points I want to get to as well for action items and things before we go to the wisdom in action. Yeah. But what I hear you saying, Cindy, is communicate, right? Like check in with your friend. I know if I say I need space, I need space. Depending on if that's the last conversation we had, and it's been a while since we had a conversation, maybe I don't need space anymore,
Right.
So maybe if you're going to go and yes, your friend just lost her husband, so you don't want to invite her out, maybe telling her that before you guys go so they don't see it on the stories like, wow, like not part of the group anymore, like that makes perfect sense.
Or
Um,
ask her how she feels.
yeah, yeah,
Invite
ask,
her anyway, and
yeah.
she can decide whether she's ready to go or not.
Right. And if the friend
mhm.
group is uncomfortable, which might be a thing, maybe you guys need more space, then you have the right to honor that too,
Yeah.
but don't put it on your friend if that's not where the weight of it lives, like just communicating through it so everybody is honored is
Yeah.
what I hear you saying.
Everybody asks, what do you need? What can I do? How can I help? Or give me a call if you need anything. Well, most of us aren't going to reach out and
Yeah.
ask for things. I didn't know what I needed.
Right.
I just needed to get through the day.
Right.
I didn't know that I needed somebody to sit and, watch,
Do nothing with me.
rewatch Friends for the
Mhm.
billionth time.
Right. Yeah. Smelly cat, smelly cat. I think that's my favorite episode.
What are they feeding you?
Right. Oh. So Cindy, I had this question about what you said earlier and disability, because I think that, like mine, somebody might be listening and their ears perked up. Again, I know when I went back to work, it was a lot to ask me to do the bare minimum. Training and all this other stuff was a lot. So can you walk through how we're categorizing grief now and some of the resources that are available that you were going to bring up?
Talk to your employer, talk to the HR department, even if if you have to go back to work, what for what you feel is too soon. Talk to them and see if they have, most larger places have an EAP. Oh, I can't think of what it stands for now.
I'll look it up. It's okay. I got you.
Employee Assistant Program. That's what
There
it
we
is.
go. Yes.
Mhm.
And where, you know, they'll put you in touch with a counselor, and, you get like so many visits for
Mhm.
free or whatever. I'd love to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Um, I'd also like to get involved with just educating employers on how to help and how to deal with people who are coming back to work. You know,
Mhm.
okay, corporate says you only get 2 or 3 days. So they've got to come back. But you've also got to be aware that their mind is not going to be 100% on their job. They're going to make mistakes. And if it's in like a factory or a warehouse
Mhm.
or, something like that, a physical type job, they're going to get hurt or they're going to get somebody else hurt. Um, if you don't if you don't make accommodations, just as you would for a disability,
Right?
let them take a 5-minute break every hour, or as many breaks as they need. If they let smokers go, out
Talk,
on
talking.
break.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Talking about breaks, do you need to take a break for your doggies real quick? Or there is there
No, my son's home from
Okay.
and they're going crazy. I,
I
Okay,
I,
no,
I
I
don't
thought they were just giving you a chorus for a men chorus.
there's only 2 of them.
Okay.
I thought they were just like, "Yes, mom, yes."
Yes,
Like,
yes.
And my door is closed.
No, you're fine.
So I apologize for that.
no
Yes,
worries. We've got doggy mom listeners and out there, so not a problem.
Well, they're very
yeah.
excited to see my son when he gets home from work. So
Love that.
Beautiful. So, Cindy, every week we talk about wisdom in action, right? And things we're doing intentionally for our own wellness. And this week is financial wellness to make sure we're maintaining our wellness. So, what are you doing for financial wellness this week?
this week,
Mhm.
this is not a good week.
Okay.
I am cutting back on spending. I am
Mhm.
cutting back on um, all the monthly subscriptions that we sign up for, software subscriptions, and especially if you're in business.
Yes.
So I'm cutting back on a lot of those. And it was kind of scary how many of them I do.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm just reevaluating my budget and seeing, you know, okay, I don't need to spend money on this or this, and
Right.
canceling some of my
We talk,
memberships.
yeah, I think that's great advice. We talk about that often on the show is the audits because those automatic subscriptions, boy, they can sneak up on you.
Yes,
Yeah, they
they
can.
Sometimes we know they're happening, and sometimes we don't know they're happening, and
Right.
or we were using them and then we're not using them, and
Right.
so that regular check in with ourselves and our numbers and our finances. What about you, Shannon? What are you doing?
I love what Cindy just said, the reevaluating.
Hmm.
I think that's where I am and moving logistics, moving blocks of time around, seeing where we are. Things are going to change again soon with open enrollment coming, so reevaluating. And I've been thinking about the subscription that I've had open since the first time I worked with the SCAD class. And she was like, oh, yeah, you need Canva Teams. I don't think we ever use this Canva Teams thing. So, Canva, I would like a refund for all 24 months, please and thank you. But reevaluate, and that's what I'm doing as my action step. What about you,
Right?
Christine?
Yeah, I am at a conference this week. So, I am pausing. So, I will commit to not buying everything from every vendor. Because I get, there are people I love and adore. So, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a budget
Mm,
for what I'm allowed to spend in the vendor area, and I'm gonna stick to my budget.
I
So,
love
because I'm gonna want to support some of my folks and
Yeah.
artists and friends, but I don't have to buy from every table.
Mm,
So
I like it. And then it's like, ooh, what sparks the most joy? What do I want? Yeah,
right,
I love
Well,
that.
right.
do it like you should do with a buffet. You go through and you what all is there, and then you go back and
Mm,
get things you really want.
Right?
Wow.
That's some great practical advice. Thank
Yes.
you so much, Cindy, for this conversation, for your work in the world. How do folks find you if they need a companion on this grief journey?
Well, Facebook, I'm Cindy Judd Burns on Facebook. My website is going through growing pains right now. Hopefully, in 2 or 3 weeks, it'll be completely redesigned. And they can always email me at cindyjburns.com.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And I actually have one more question for
Oh,
you.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Because we titled this, right? We titled this show Good Grief. And I know on your website, you talk about taking people from grief to growth, right? From pain to purpose. And we shared a lot about what it looked like for us to go through different seasons of grief. Can you give our listeners who are going to look for you a little bit about what that transition is and what good grief means when we're talking about it?
I'm also a happiness coach. So
Important.
I the road I take them is, if they stay with me long enough, um, from the grief to learning who they are, to finding their new purpose, bringing more happiness into their lives. And you can be. I'm thinking of doing a course very soon on resilience,
Okay.
because we do grief helps us to learn to be resilient.
Yeah.
Um, we can learn so much from our pain, from our grief. And that's what that's my goal, is to help people learn about themselves through their grief.
Mhm.
And that way they can grow and end up having a pretty good life.
Yes. Thank you so much. Love it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the work that you're doing and sharing yours and Dan's story, Connor and the boys. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was a
Absolutely.
pleasure being here.
So
Yeah.
grateful to be connected. Thanks, Cindy. Have a great day. Ah, good stuff. Good stuff. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. This conversation that we're having is like what motivated all the businesses, Shaylo Glow and us taking care of ourselves, us being connected to the dimensions of wellness and experts who can help walk us through that, who have the experience to support us in the areas that we need support in. And we talked about insurance lightly. Um, and the only thing I didn't say that came up is that a lot of times we have this conversation about, I want to leave my family set up. And like Cindy said, how do we want to leave our families?
Mhm,
What I'm excited about is what she mentioned when she said, getting people connected to the financial planner, right? Like the
mhm,
bankers to help you
mhm,
with the money, financial planners to help you grow it. And
mhm.
it doesn't just have to be when we transition that our family gets this benefit. There's a lot of different ways we can set it up and be intentional, be proactive about it. And because of how difficult this can be is why I'm excited to do the things I'm doing. And that's
Right,
what I try to remember. So I'm great
right.
after this conversation.
Got
What
some
about you?
tools. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good. Just
Yeah.
want to invite our listeners to take a deep breath and let it out with a big old sigh and a shake. And you might need to roll your shoulders if you're holding anything. Because,
Yeah.
sometimes when we talk about grief, it brings up memories. It brings up all the folks we've lost. And sometimes that's really awesome. And sometimes that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
So utilizing some of the tools we talked about today, whether
Mhm.
that's, reaching out to a buddy or writing in your journal or dancing. We didn't talk about that with Cindy, but we danced in. So
Yeah. Yeah. That could be the spark of joy in the day.
right? It actually could.
Yeah.
So, well, I am just grateful. Grateful to be connected to you, my friend.
Me too.
Rocked out episode 166. We will
Yes.
be back next week with episode 167. Grateful for our listeners that were listening live today and
Yes.
those
Thank you,
that'll
guys.
be hearing this when it's out there. And yeah, anything else we need to say? Whoop,
No,
I
I don't think
accidentally hit the
so.
wrong button, Cindy. Sorry.
Okay. No problem. I don't think so. I know that you're at Alternate Roots Week.
Yeah.
Are there any other offerings or anything that you would like to let our listeners know about?
Always at interplay.org, folks can check out what's going on, or at my link tree with what I have coming up locally. And that just happens. I am having a lot of fun at the Duluth Library series,
Mm,
and we've got interplayers there once a
mhm.
month. But check that out on my link tree and see what we have coming up. And I'm gonna do my best
Mhm.
to be kind of low key this fall
Okay.
and really, be on the podcast, do the things we have slated, but kind of take some time to reset and refill my bucket.
Yeah.
Because I told somebody this week, I was like, "Oh, my bucket has a little hole in it after
Mhm.
this last year, and it doesn't seem to be filling up at the rate that it usually does." So,
Mhm.
really practicing what I preach. So, not as many offerings, but there'll be a few. I can't help myself.
I
So.
hear you. I hear you. And that's what I would say, y'all. Like, if you're in the season and you do feel like slowing down, that's something I
Mhm.
needed to do. I was still
Right.
serving at church and doing all this stuff. And I realized I was invited out, right? Got invited to a friend's event. And I said, maybe that was a little heavy to share the way I shared it. Maybe I need to take some more time and process in a different space and then come back out. Or if you do feel like your friend groups are shifting, the library is actually a really good place, y'all. We have some good events. They're talking about gardening, crocheting. I mean, those things are interesting to me, right? Gardening, crocheting, there's movies, there's all types of stuff. Usually the library is free. So great
Well, and I
resource.
know in Atlanta, we have a really big hub for meetup, like where you can find groups of people
Yeah.
that free events or paid events. And one resource I want to give a shout out because we're talking about grief.
Yes.
Um, I teach on the Reimagine platform. So letsreimagine.org is a virtual platform where people offer classes about reimagining the way we grieve, live, and love. And there's a lot of free grief resources on there. So we'll put that in our show notes to make sure that you can have access to those resources. And yeah, I reach out. That's the other thing I would say to folks, that if you're struggling, reach out. That you don't have to do it by yourself. So
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us for this Good Grief and Finances, episode 166. Like Christine said, we'll see you here live at 5 Eastern Standard Time next week. In the meantime, don't forget,
be well
be wise and
and
be
be
whole.
whole.
Peace.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.